Welcome to Trials, Tales and Trails, a podcast for life sciences, healthcare and clinical trials. Our guests tell the tales and trails we record from a Volkswagen campervan. So, Trials, Tales and Trails is back. We've hit the trails and taken the podcast on the road, and we've listened to your feedback. This is the first in a series of shorter episodes, recorded live at the Clinical Outsourcing Group's conference in London, England. The COG events are organised by PBC Group and bring together decision makers from across the spectrum of clinical research, with thought leaders from the industry, including regulatory and academia, alongside trusted, innovative solution providers. While in London, Andy and Chris spoke to Sébastien Coppe, CEO of One to Treat, who's using data to reduce sample sizes and provide choice of access to the treatments which best suit each individual patient.
Here we are with Sébastien Coppe, who is the CEO of One to Treat. Tell us a little bit about One to Treat, Sébastien.
One to Treat is leveraging some statistical methodologies, trying to elevate all the decisions about treatment and treatment effects in clinical trials, clinical research. Trying to get out of this kind of way to assess the treatment effects based on one single criteria, one single outcome. For instance, about overall survival in cancer research, but trying to care a bit more about what is important for patients. And so give back, I would say, the ability to patients and patients advocacy group to express their preferences. Coming back to cancer, which kind of objective measure can we try to include in those kind of treatment assessments, trying to better, I would say, highlight the quality of life of patients, for instance, and making sure that as a patient suffering from cancer, you do not only focus on trying to live longer, but live better, reduce your toxicities and all those kind of secondary effects that you may have with chemotherapy or other kind of treatments. And that's really this idea, is just trying to have one single assessment, what we call the net treatment benefits for patients.
Right.
And this net treatment benefits, should definitely involve all the efficiency of the treatment, but also all the risks. And the risks may be related to those kind of quality of life, toxicities, and so on.
Yeah. So FDA, AMA, and the like, they're looking for more of this data.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And this is part of their guidance that, in terms of endpoints and outcomes,
right,
if you can provide the real world evidence side of things, then you have much more than just your normal submission, right?
Correct. And I guess part of your question is definitely about the way we can leverage data, because when you look to clinical trials, actually there is a tiny percent of the data that is collected that will be actually used to assess whether the treatment is good or not. Good meaning you can move to the next phase of your clinical research, or you can move to market. But what's the percentage of the data that is used? To just assess whether or not the patients suffering from cancer, they live longer. And again, I'm just taking an extreme example, of course, but if you better leverage the data, it's better for patients. It's definitely, coming back to your point, that's definitely what the EMA, FDA is, asking for. More leveraging the data will also allow basically to reduce the sample size, reduce the amount of patients that you need to recruit in your clinical trials to demonstrate the effects of your treatment. And that's, of course, powerful, because everyone is looking for faster clinical research, cheaper clinical research, and it all starts with how many patients do you need to recruit to demonstrate this kind of treatment effect.
It's a remarkable kind of approach. I think not just the timeline acceleration and obviously reducing costs, but the engagement you must have with patients must be so much stronger and more meaningful, I think, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, that's what we've heard from multiple sponsors. Of course, all sponsors right now, they get closer and closer to patients advocacy group and so on, but it's not always easy for sponsors to make sure the feedback from those patient advocacy groups may be, I would say, included in clinical research. And as I was mentioning, it's so much making sense, to include those kind of preferences, patients' preferences, in the primary endpoints, which will be the key reasons to move forward or to stop your clinical research. Because coming back to this extreme example about oncology, but if your patients are living longer, but not better, I mean, do you really want to get to market? I don't think so. I mean, at least you can challenge, I mean, this kind of idea. And so again, being able to assess whether or not you should continue the clinical research based on this kind of more holistic view on the treatment effect is definitely something that will be really efficient for patients as well.
You know, and I think, not just the scientific element, but if you to start actually gauging feedback from the families and support mechanisms around patients, and even more so paediatric studies, it must be fantastic. Good for you, though. So, what inspired you to kind of start this up then?
So yeah, I've been working in the clinical research for the last 10 years, but being a bit more far away from patients and from, I would say, the end goal, the purpose of clinical research.
Right.
And that's definitely something that I've been really always passionate about that. I did my PhD thesis a long time ago, but we're working with patients suffering from different kind of dementia and stuff. So it's definitely something that is fascinating, right? I mean, there are so many improvements still to be done in clinical research. And so being a bit more patient-centric while still using my kind of core business or expertise, which is more about mathematics, analytical skills, data. So.
Now that makes sense. Now you're talking about how it all pieces together. Because I was going to ask you that this idea, it's relatively new. What, 6 months did you say? Something like that?
The company is about 6 months old, right?
Yeah. So it's a new idea, right? Relatively new idea. You're talking about all the data analytics and the endpoints. But what makes this doable now and not 10 or 15 years ago?
So I guess, I mean, two things. I mean, the statistical methodology that is behind our company has been actually designed and published in peer-reviewed scientific papers 15 years ago. So it's already, 15 years old.
Right.
And over the last 15 years, I guess it has been developed and improved in many different directions. And it has already been used by multiple pharma sponsors to register clinical trials to get to market. But from time to time, not being able to leverage the full, I would say, the power of the methodology. And that's really the goal of our company, is really making sure at 23 we can help sponsors fully leverage the potential of this, what we call GPC methodology, which is a stat methodology that enables this kind of more holistic treatment assessment.
The evolution of technology has come around at just the right time for you.
Absolutely.
Yes, doesn't it? Yeah.
And everything like related to computer being more and more efficient. I mean, that's also something important, because at the end of the day, what we'll have to do is running simulations. That's highly time consuming when it comes back to, computer. I mean, it's kind of computer intensive. And of course, I mean, doing it today or doing it 10 years ago changed everything. So right now, you press the button, you just have to wait, maybe a few minutes, while, I mean, you had to wait a few days, weeks, a few years ago. So that's definitely something that is allowing more and more this kind of analysis.
You were saying about how you look at sort of pairs as well, right? So that's a real key point. Tell us a little bit about that.
That's a bit the idea, the concepts of the methodology, right? I mean, the goal is to compare patients from two different groups. I mean, so typically in randomized clinical trials, you may have basically trying to test to assess your new therapy against, the standard of care, for instance. The methodologies are actually taking each patient from each group and comparing the patients with all the other patients individually from the other group. So let's take the first patient of the first group, first patient of the second group. The idea is really to have simple rules that include multiple outcomes that can allow us basically to tell which patients is the most benefiting from the treatment or its own treatment. Is it first treatment, patients A or patients B? And you compare the pairs of the patients. And you can tell, okay, patients A is, definitely having a better life, whatever the therapeutic area, but the treatment is definitely having much more impact on patients A than patients B. Is it because these patients, for my example, previous example about cancer, is living longer, or because the two patients are living more or less the same, but there is one patient that has definitely a much better quality of life, of less toxicities? So that's the idea. And you may have different criteria where typically you will try to compare the two patients first based on overall survival, trying to to really stay close to what is typically used for those kind of cancer research.
Yeah.
But if the two patients are living more or less the same, then you move to the second priority. And then, it may be more, again, quality of sleep or quality mobility for multiple sclerosis, for instance. So you can again adapt those kind of outcomes basically on the needs of the patient.
It could improve the outcomes of studies as well,
Right.
just around patient retention. So, the potential of where this can go, obviously it's early days for you, but like the future's looking very bright.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're right. What we try to do is first, trying to help
Yeah.
pharma companies design the clinical trials, including those multiple outcomes. But you're right.
Right.
Later on, at the end of the clinical trial, you want to analyze the data based on this kind of multiple outcomes, this kind of holistic view on treatment effects, and it definitely helps. Also to recruit patients, to retain patients, because they know that at the end of the day, the treatment will be assessed in this kind of more holistic view that they do, which matters to them.
It's fantastic.
And you can see as well, from a rare disease point of view, there's only a small number of patients, but research in rare diseases is increasing. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You go back 10 years ago, and there were certain indications where research was happening, and now there's much more funding, there's much more technology, there's much more what can you say, propensity to actually do that research and funding for it. When you're talking about reducing sample sizes, that's huge, because there's only a certain number of patients out there that you can potentially get. That's a game changer potentially.
Yep, absolutely.
And also, like, you think about site burden, like the fatigue, and what the patient's previous experience may have been if they've been in other studies. You've got this potential to kind of offer them a completely different experience.
Yep. And I guess another aspect that is really important for me, I guess, is trying to connect the dots between clinical research and what is happening after approval of the drug, right?
Absolutely.
Everything related to HTA, market access, reimbursement.
Yeah.
We all know that from time to time there is a disconnect from the data that is collected in the clinical trials that is used for getting the approval, and later on, which kind of data is used actually for reimbursement. We know that there is a flexibility that from time to time is not always, I guess, fair for patients. About which kind of the data do you want to use, to leverage for those kind of reimbursement purpose. And here, that's the idea. If you start to predefine, at the, for instance, phase 3 clinical trial design, you predefine the top 5 priorities or preferences for patients, and you want to care about those kind of 5 preferences for patients, you will get approved. Your drug will get approved, yes or no, based on those 5 outcomes. But if that's the case, you already provide this kind of holistic view that will be required later on for reimbursement purposes. And again, for me, it's really making a lot of sense to have this kind of transparent, exercise from clinical research to market access, and not play on different criteria. Imagine that you, as a pharma sponsor, you would have a lot of very positive effects, but of course you want to hide a bit the less positive effects of your treatment. That's part of the game. Kind of when you go to HTA, market access, reimbursement. So I guess that's definitely something that may help also authorities, agencies, to drive a bit more consistency between those clinical research and reimbursement later.
So how much do you have to, and that's a fantastic point, trying to blend the commercial ambition with still maintaining like the best for humanity, patients. How much do you have to adapt on a country-by-country basis, taking into account so much kind of the range of regulatory challenges, patient concerns, site access and so on as well? How much do you flex on a country-by-country basis?
So that's a good question. I guess I would expect that, as I was mentioning, you can list down probably all the patient's outcome, or patient support that would be important for a given therapeutic area. And it's more about which kind of priorities are you going to give for each of those kind of outcomes based on one country, maybe focusing more in terms of reimbursement, thinking about one outcome than the other and so on. But I guess that's also the beauty of this kind of method is you can change the priorities based on I would say the countries in your question, but I would go even one step further. You can change the priorities based on individual patients, right? Think about as an individual patient. I mean, I'm suffering today, I don't know, suffering from multiple sclerosis, imagine. And I have multiple treatments in front of me.
Right.
Which one, do I want to choose? And of course, in collaboration with my specialist, my doctor, but maybe I want as a patient, to just express the priorities and choose which kind of
Absolutely.
priorities is the most important. Exactly. That's an individual, I would say, patient's level, I would say, decision making process. And that's really something that, again, that's what we aim to do. In a few years from now on, we are definitely lacking the database today. To have access to all those kind of, data, maybe part of different kind of individual sponsors database, but today, there is not this kind of shared database
Yeah.
that maybe or hopefully, will come in the
that would
future.
be-
And if that's the case, you may expect each patient to just sort it out. I do not want to live longer. I want to keep my mobility. I want to sleep well. And you choose which priority, and then you go to treatment A or treatment B or treatment C. You discuss it with your doctor, your specialist, and maybe you get to the point about, that's what is important for me as a patient.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Sebastian, you've got a smile on your face. I can tell that you love this. Your background's in mathematics and analytics. So what drives you? Like, what's the kind of, what gave you the energy to go and do this?
I guess we are speaking more and more about data.
Yeah.
To my experience, it's not always easy to understand each other when you speak between doctors and mathematicians, and from time to time, you have the best of one word, and there is a small silo, and it's not always easy to connect the dots. That's my passion. My passion is definitely about trying to use mathematics and advanced techniques, statistical techniques here, but make sure it may be implemented and used in day-to-day concrete examples, right? And that's fascinating. Making sure there is not too much this kind of black box effect that we all kind of hate, right? Go to a doctor and you ask the doctor, to change his way of working and giving one treatment or the other to the patient, and just trust a black box. It will never work, right? So you need to make sure you can also manage the communication, manage the sensitivity, drive a smooth change. I guess that's what we need to do in many different dimensions for improving clinical research, improving the efficiency. And I guess data is part of it, part of the storytelling, I guess. And that's what I'm trying to do is articulate the message, articulate the communication so that we can make better decisions for treatments, for patients, and definitely support clinicians in a slightly different way. Data-driven way, but in a smooth way. Because you do not want to change the world in a day, right?
Thanks for listening, and please get in touch with feedback, suggestions for future guests, or to inquire about sponsorship opportunities. You can subscribe using your go-to podcast provider or follow at trialstalesandtrails.com. On behalf of all participants, views expressed are our own and not necessarily those of our employers, past, present or future. Trials, Tales and Trails was written by Andy Thurston and Chris Wells and produced by Andy Thurston.